Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr. This is episode 249 of CryptoBiography, and it's part 15 of the Isle of Bronze. And here we go. The day before they were to start telling everyone was one that Nasramin used to rest and reflect. Shugo did not give an answer that day about Theodora and whether he would make her his wife, or look for a wife on his Unity search, or take some other course. It was also the time that evening to hear grievances, various troubles from people across Limos. This ranged from neighbors having arguments to people having health or other troubles requiring more help than their nearby communities could provide. On very rare occasions, foreigners would come asking for some kind of aid, not powerful ones who would go through diplomatic channels, but people from the lower classes who had some trouble or another drive them across the sea. Limos was famous for not allowing many strangers to its shores. It was a small island nation after all, and despite their pride in their history of having peoples from many nations in their ancient past, they had long since closed their borders to most new immigrants. Nasramin found himself somewhat disengaged from the problems of the people in front of him. Only his deeply ingrained sense of propriety kept him on track with what needed to be done in each case. Happily, that was soon done, and he was able to return to his chambers. Mawaya was not there. This sometimes happened, as she liked to push herself sometimes, in hopes that the wheelchair would not go from being mostly necessary to full-time. Her helpers aided her with various exercises. He knew from experience that she would be tired and sore when she returned and would not expect him to do anything for her, so he went to bed, missing her but proud of her determination. The next morning came, and with it was the first round of meetings to tell the people about their situation. The very first meeting included the High Priest Linus and both of his own sons, plus a number of high-level leaders from around the island. They met in the palace. The later meetings would take him around the island. He laid out the news, the dangers, and their plans. He really left very little held back. Some of the details of exactly how the Bronze Gate was being improved and so on were not given, but that was not because he didn't trust these leaders, but because they were not germane to his purpose of letting them be informed and holding back panic. Though the room was tense, that tension seemed to Nasramin to be at its height when he was explaining the dangers facing them, and ebbed as he went over their plans. His sons knew enough about being the king's son not to cause problems by asking any questions when the time for questions came at the end. A few questions were asked and answered of little consequence. Then Linus cleared his throat for attention. Nasramin nodded and asked for his question. "What do you think the gods will have to say about these changes to our island?" the High Priest asked. "I think that's for the gods and our High Priest to say," Nasramin said. "Would you like to lead us in a prayer to end our meeting?" Linus looked slightly disappointed to Nasramin's eyes, but he led the group in a prayer, after which Nasramin left first, per tradition. The rest of the day was busy with groups across the island. They had all been set up by Nasramin's people, so they were prepared for his arrival, so he could give the information and then get to the next meeting. These meetings went smoothly, but at the end of the day he was becoming exhausted. The plan was to make the long trek back to the palace so that he would be in his own bed that night, but this made the day even longer. The palace crawled towards them as he saw it from the back of his wagon. Mercedes was with them, but they had both had a long day, and his general was tired. Despite this, Nasramin knew that when they arrived, Mercedes, before going to his rest, would check on his sources and make sure nothing of importance had happened during their day's absence. But Mercedes didn't have to go find his sources. As soon as the wagon made the last turn before the palace gates, a messenger had sprinted up to them, apparently having run from the palace as soon as they had come into view. The messenger was running so hard that he skidded on some gravel as he went into a kneeling position beside the wagon. "King Nasramin, there's a message from the Assyrians. It awaits you in the throne room." Nasramin noted the use of it rather than he. Thank you. Let them know we will arrive soon. The messenger gasped his acknowledgement and sprinted away up the hill. Do you wish to ride a horse to get there faster? Mercili asked. No. It will still be there when we arrive. But if he wasn't panicking inside, he was at the very least frightened at what this could mean. He had, of course, not sent out emissaries to the Assyrians when they had started reaching out to other lands and other powers for alliances. This could not be good news. The wagon rolled along. Mercili, he could tell, was looking at him, awaiting his least word, wondering what he could do to help, but there was nothing yet. Not until he had gone and received his message. Deep inside there was a small part of him that wanted to leap out of the wagon, with its speed about that of a walking man, and hurtle up the hill to the palace to see whatever it was as soon as possible. But that part was overwhelmed by the part of him that had long had control. He was, as always, thinking ahead. If anyone saw him leave his wagon and hustle to his castle, even if he did it with as much dignity as possible, the word would spread that he was nervous, and that wouldn't help anything, particularly now. He looked over at Mercili, who was still looking levelly at him. His general was one of the few people on the island, outside of family, who could look him in the eye. My friend, he said to Mercili, the message awaits us. We do not await it. When we see what they have said, then we will act. Until then, look around. The sun is setting beautifully behind the castle. The hills are alive with trees and crops. You can just hear the ocean's roar from the south. And the bugs are buzzing in the tall grasses. I will have need of you soon, but for now, enjoy. Mercili let his stare slide away, and he started, too, to look at their beautiful island. He even relaxed his face into something resembling a smile. Nasramin, happy to help his friend, also enjoyed the rest of the ride. Soon enough they were in the courtyard, and were being brought to the throne room. He was the last one in, as always, though there were precious few in the room this time. No one from Assyria was there. Mercili was there, and Mawaya. His people had correctly deduced that he would want his wife there with him, and helped her to get there. Instead of an Assyrian emissary of some kind, there were 2 large chests. No, he realized, not just chests. He had seen these chests before. They were the 2 chests that thieves had sent with Queen Callis, filled with iron weapons and armor. And that's the end of the show for this week. Hope you're enjoying it. I enjoyed, obviously, writing this. And, yeah, big things coming next week, obviously. If you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, CryptoBiography@gmail.com, or hit us up on Facebook or Twitter. And thanks for listening. Words of Music copyright 2022, CryptoBiography LLC, all rights reserved. Characters and events are fictional, fictionalized, or satirical.